honestly it's almost like a uphill fight because like you're struggling with many things many people just take for granted. So you know, but like there's an advantage. It makes you more serious in a way. And it was all self-taught, watching the loads of tutorials. But not, it just kept coming naturally. There will be a challenge. It will be new to you. You want to be like, oh, how do you do this? You look it up. Just doing that over the years, man. It's crazy. Like honestly, that whole thing, it really boosted my self confidence. Until today, I feel like there's nothing I can't learn on my own. Like, because you really don't need school.
Um, if you were to start from scratch now, you didn't have your MacBook, you
Yeah,
didn't have your camera. Where would you start?
yeah. With my phone. I'll start with my phone. I can make anything with, anything, honestly. It's the idea, honestly. Most times we get lost with the tools, but it's the idea at the end of the day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Foreign Gems. This is going to be episode 17. I know we actually agreed we maybe wouldn't mention the episode names anymore, but I think we're at episode 17 now. So deep into the podcast, then. I'm looking forward to our next guest episode. Um, Fumbi's going to be our third guest on the podcast so far. Second time recording and attempting video again. So this is really exciting for us. Fumbi is a creative as well, which is particularly exciting to me, and I know for Ola as well, because like we talk a lot about like career related things, but like the creative side of things and creative careers are super interesting to us as well. And we're big lovers of music over here at Foreign Gems, so really looking forward to hearing your story, Fumbi. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. It's good to be on the platform.
Yeah, man, we're happy to have you. Ola, do you want to introduce Fumbi?
Yeah, for sure. Before we even get to Fumbi, for context, the reason why we don't introduce the podcast episode number is for you binge listeners. We don't want we don't want it to sound repetitive or boring, but we don't know the answers yet. So please let us know whatever you think. If you like us mentioning numbers, so it keeps you, like a breadcrumb, let us know. If you don't like it, let us know as well. But yeah, speaking of feedback though, um, Fumbi is actually our first listener of the podcast. When we started this, it was one of the people that I mentioned the concepts to, just to get his idea, his thoughts. His feedback was one of the things that gave us the confidence to keep going. And when we did launch, he was our very first listener as well, outside of Mac and I. So it's nice to have Fumbi here. Fumbi is my longest friend, about 22 years now. So it's been a great friendship, and he's one of the most creative people I know, and he just keeps getting even way more creative over time. And Fumbi he schooled in Coventry, I believe, uh,
Birmingham.
Birmingham. Okay, um, and he decided to move back to Nigeria to pursue his creative passion. Fun fact: the last time I was in Nigeria, Fumbi had just quit his corporate job, and he was telling me that he was diving into this videography editing world, and I could understand why, because I'm a creative myself, but I know in Nigeria it's a very scary leap, so I didn't understand how it would make that work. But within a couple of months, you could start seeing the success from that. So that was inspiring for me, and I've used that as an example of the power of going after your dreams. So that's pretty much what we'll be talking about today with Fumbi, just to try to understand his journey, lessons along the way, and for anyone else trying to make the same leap, what they can do. Welcome to Foreign Gems officially,
Thank
Fumbi,
you. Thank
aka
you.
Fez.
Yeah, I was gonna say like we can just stick with Fez for the purpose of this podcast because like that's like the creative moniker, and that's what most people know me as. Because with Ola, like he said, it goes back like 22 years. So is almost like family at this point. But some people don't even know that name. From me. But yeah. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. Glad to share my perspective. Disclaimer for anybody listening. You know, um, from a creator in Nigeria. Basically making it work from here. So yeah, these are my opinions and my perspective. I'm here to share.
I mean, that's what it's all about. Familiar topics, foreign perspectives. So I'm sure someone can connect to your journey. So yeah, Mark, do you have any question for Fumbi?
Yeah, let's start off with the classic journey. I just want to kind of know how you ended up, becoming Fez in a way, So um, please tell me your story, from leaving Nigeria for the first time, going to school, and then making the tough decision to quit your corporate job to actually pursue a career in creative, which is a big risk, and so I'm really excited to hear about that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I could. I'll just start from where like the whole inspiration came and like which now when I look back, it now looks like what was like the turning point for like everything. Because up until then, there's this toxic Nigerian thing they do where they just like put you in school and you do your primary, secondary, university, and even up until my master's, I was actually still figuring it out because at that point I still didn't really know like, but I was always in school, so But yeah, this whole thing started working on my dissertation, you know, my master's, and for some health reason or the other, I don't want to go into that. I wasn't able to finish with the people I had come in with, so I was held back like a year. So I had this space of time where all I was doing was just working on that project, and funny enough, at the same time, feeling all that feeling of like it's quite depressing, like seeing all the people you came with leaving, and then you're staying back, for some health challenge or something. But and then at the same time, I happen to be going through this really devastating breakup with my ex at the time, who I thought was going to get married to. So yeah, it was a lot going on. I needed some time to just like breathe. And England, my relationship with England has always been like love hate. It's always cold, it's always gray, like there's no sun. It was even later I now found out that the lack of sun actually depresses Africans, like in a way, like on some biological level. But like, yeah, so I traveled, I took like a break, went to New York for a while. And it was while I was there, um, I would always try to just go out because I was living with a friend who was a nurse. So she would always like have these long shifts. I would always be alone in the apartment. So I would go out, find myself recording stuff, come back to the apartment. And that was my first time like trying to edit anything. So I realized the process of editing was like something that whenever I did it, I would just forget time and I could lose 5 hours, 6 hours. So that was how the cycle just started. Wake up, dress up, go out, record New York, come back in, edit, and that was what took me into like loving film, loving editing, and the whole filmmaking thing. And that was pretty much what started it. Just doing something that you love and you don't mind pouring hours and hours into. So that was the beginning basically. And yeah, so got back to England, graduated, came to Nigeria. I got this job in an IT company. I was doing quality assurance, and I was basically testing all the tech products and making notes. And it was funny because even while I was there, like I said, while you're in school, like you're still figuring it out. Like you start working, and then everything starts becoming clearer. You start seeing where things fit in, and the reason for all that studying, it starts revealing itself. So yeah, my first experience was um, in a tech company. But yeah, like I said, they would always get me to do things like, oh, we want to do this advert or something. They would always get me to shoot and edit stuff, but it wasn't even my job description. But then I think even the CFO or something, the top level, they noticed like, oh, whenever he's doing this, he's like so happy and all that. Like, so so going down the line, there were some there was new management, and they had to do some what they call it now, layoffs and all that. And not like I was even happy there in the first place, so I kind of like, and episode 6, funny enough, like you guys talked about layoffs,
Yeah.
and that was a real eye-opener for me, because I then when it was all happening, I didn't really understand. I just knew, oh, there was some issues, but then that episode really like puts it into perspective, lets you understand why these things happen and all that. So yeah, it was really nice listening to that.
Hey
Uh,
man, appreciate that.
yeah, man. So I just basically put myself up. I was like, okay, guys, I would go like, sign me up. So basically, did a letter, resigned, and put all the money I had saved while I was there. I remember I was able to afford one camera and one laptop.
Yeah.
One camera, one laptop. Quit the job, ground zero, no fear. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you why there was no fear, like during the course of the conversation. But yeah, I just said F it basically. So even then, it was more like I was learning myself on YouTube, and I would always just go out, post stuff, edit stuff. It was nothing for anyone. It wasn't jobs then. It wasn't clients then. It was just more of someone that just really liked doing this thing, and then people just started gravitating towards it. Like, I'll have so many eyes on my page, on my story, and that was where this comedian Basketmouth found me, just posting all these things on my story. Yeah, so but he didn't know me directly, and we had a mutual friend, so he hit her up. He was like, "Yo, do you know this guy's videos are crazy? Like, I want him to," because he was going on tour in England and Europe. So it was like, "Yeah, I want him to come with me so he can do this craziness for me." So yeah, and that was kind of like how it started, man, with basketball, just like touring England, Manchester, London, and all the cities. Yeah,
Amazing, man.
and that
And
was how
what
it moved from like the hobby to the started
full time?
becoming like a thing now that I was
Yeah.
getting paid for. Yeah.
I'm really curious, like when you were first filming, like in New York, filming, basically a day and putting the edits together. Were you putting those on like Instagram, on YouTube? Like what was your platform and why did you choose that one?
Yeah, so those videos, did those videos see the light of day? I don't know. I think some of them made it to YouTube. Yeah, some of them made it to YouTube, but then it was just like I would just show myself, show the girl I was living with in our apartment,
Yeah.
like, and then maybe my brother. Those people that would encourage you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I wasn't really putting it out then. Yeah, no, not until I came back to Nigeria and I started putting out those videos I was doing myself. Not
Yeah.
until I came back. Yeah.
And so the opportunity that happened with basketball was that after you moved back to Nigeria?
Yes, after I came
Okay.
back. Yeah, because
Okay.
then I was in the environment, and it was easier to just call me, and that was my first time. I remember the first day I met him. I thought it was a scary guy because I don't know, he had the afro, and funny enough, the first day I met him, he was pissed off at someone else. So I was like, the mood was tense. So
Yeah.
I was like, is this guy going to transfer his aggression to me? And then only for him to just like look at me, and then it's just like a different person. I'd never seen anything like that. Like the whole rage. I think he basically fired that guy that day. And then he just looked at me and he was just like all smiles, like, yo,
Awesome.
like, so,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was a crazy first experience.
You
Yeah.
could, you could turn it on and off immediately.
Right. Like, Yeah, and then first experience with a celebrity, and then he'll be the first of many. Like, oh, I've
Yeah,
worked with a lot of celebrities in Nigerian music
yeah.
space. Yeah, since then,
So
yeah.
that actually leads me to my next question. I was gonna ask you about the types of projects that you like to work on. So, when you were filming early days, trying to figure out the editing, it's kind of whatever's around you. But now that you have a bit of a portfolio, you can decide which types of people you want to work with. And like the first person you mentioned, clearly like a creative, comedian going on tour, doing that kind of thing. Is that what you gravitate more towards, or are you like, exploring other options too?
So in the beginning, because I started with events, I would call those comedy shows events. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I naturally gravitated towards events. So, and
yeah,
also I feel like because I didn't have the like when you're learning anything, even if it's guitar or anything, there will be the classical way. They'll be like, "Oh, this is how we've always done it." Like,
yeah,
but when you pick it up yourself and
yeah,
just like start strumming, like, there's a different muscle memory that goes with it. And like, I
yeah,
just had my own way of making my videos, so I
yeah,
stuck with events. Tried weddings, didn't like weddings,
yeah,
so I stuck with events,
yeah.
lifestyle, and stuff like that in entertainment. Where the rules were a little bit more flexible.
Gotcha.
But yeah, but these
Do
days
you
I'm
know?
doing commercials and all that for brands and all that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a question I wanted to ask. Um, when you decided to go down the route of more creative projects, did you look at the commercial value of those, and why are you doing the more commercials now?
okay, so honestly, I always just gravitated more towards any space or industry that allowed almost like complete creativity. Because like if you're working for a bank, for example, like they would want you to like storyboard everything almost to like the T. So like I found myself naturally being moving away from such strict rules, because like with my like why should anybody be so strict with creativity? It's like playing, like you should be able to, do you get? So like yeah, with events, high festivals, stuff like that, it's more flexible. They allow you play, they allow you create how you want in more dynamic ways. So that's why I gravitated towards that. And now with commercials, these brands that are calling me are the brands that are more like, yeah, go on, like do your thing. Like they let me play with it, like, you know, and I'm so proud to have those people like with me. Like I'm believing in me. Like, some of them have stuck with me since like 2020, 2019. So, we just become more than working. Listening becomes like a friendship, partnership, you know, stuff like that. So, yeah, just naturally gravitate more towards where I'm allowed to express my creativity however I like.
Right. So, speaking of working with stars now, when I was in Nigeria the last time, one of the things you mentioned, actually, we went to a show for this artist that was known as Santi at the time. Now he's known as Crow Santino. We could not see him for some reason. He didn't show up, and you were so disappointed. But somehow, now you've manifested working with him. Like, how does that feel? How did that happen? Like, how does it feel?
Okay, so let me just take the story a little bit back, not all the way, but a little bit. So yeah, came back to Nigeria, started working in that tech company. So I meet this person who is now my wife in a weird way. So yeah, she was in the company and she would always like be on SoundCloud. She was more like inclined to finding new songs and like just listening to new songs. So she would always be on SoundCloud. So she introduced me to this artist. This song actually it was called Gully, and I was like, damn, I just fell in love with that song. I would always play it, and it was by this guy called Santi, and that was how I now started listening to his other stuff. I just became a fan of this guy, like enjoying the music so much, and one time a job came and it was like, oh, Santi's gonna be doing his first show in Nigeria, headline Hard Rock Cafe. We want you to cover it, because then I was doing events, working with all those brands. They like want you to cover it. So I went from like a brand angle. I didn't go from the artist side. So I was working with the brand, shooting, and I did the idea. It came out, was crazy. Like, but as with most of my stuff, then like it would always be crazy, but like in the underground way of like the people that like connected to it really. Yeah, it wasn't always mainstream. Like, so that underground buzz was like the video was really being shared everywhere, and it got to Santi. It got to Santi. I don't know how it got to him. So he saw the video. He was like, because he didn't have anybody covering the event for him. I don't think his label. So everybody just used that video I did for that event. But it was heavy on branding, but it was like really impressive. So he we had a mutual friend. There's always a mutual friend. That's another good thing. Always network, always have friends. Like, cause I used to go out a lot, so people knew me. Even if you didn't know me, you knew someone that knew me, because I was that kid with his camera all the time. And that one called me. It was like, oh yeah, I know the guy. Yeah, and they called me. Showed up to the house. He was like, bro, I was so nervous that day. Like, and from there it just became a friendship, brotherhood thing. Like, it was like we locked in. Yeah, man, it's crazy.
And so, if I heard correctly, you're working on a project right now with him.
Yes, 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 and that's just because the nature of the relationship.
Okay, okay,
It's like this ongoing. We're almost always working on something. Yeah.
okay, very cool. Okay, so it sounds like, okay, let me back up a little bit. My favorite part of your story is like you moving back and then you being able to turn what is your passion into your full-time career essentially. And
Yeah.
I wonder, like, could you talk a little bit more about what being in Nigeria has enabled you to do, creative wise, that maybe would have been more of a struggle, if you remained in England, for example?
Hmm. Okay, first of all the friendships were here in Nigeria. Know a lot more people here in Nigeria just because I grew up here. Born and raised. Left a little bit while I was in England. When you move like that, it's like new community, new people. It's almost like starting from zero, and not even really starting from zero. It's a new culture. Like in Nigeria, like we're more expressive, more. In England, they're more like reserved. You really can't like just be loud so yeah, it was. I didn't really find myself having a new community there. So all my friends were still in Nigeria. All those relationships were still here. So when I came back, it was like, just reconnecting with everybody, just like, how you been, going out all the time, being at all the events, all the spaces, all the concerts, underground stuff mostly, so yeah, it was a familiar environment. That was an advantage. I was comfortable. These are my people, this is my environment. But like Nigeria also has its own setbacks, which is like, it's basically almost third world. Like there's so many things we got used to in England, infrastructure, internet, electricity,
Mm.
all these things are no brainers there in England. But like coming back to Nigeria now, I came back with that mindset that none of this should be impossible for me. Like if I need to do something, I need to be able to use the internet, use electricity. I basically first my that was basically one of the first things, just like setting up, making sure you have all that covered, like your internet, your electricity.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, because of the way the country is, and the politicians don't really, the government doesn't do anything, so you have to just take everything into your own hands and make sure you have everything you need to succeed. That is tip number one for
yeah.
surviving in Nigeria.
Eh, I
So
like it.
yeah,
That's a good
uh,
tip.
you know, good base, good start, and just have a plan B for everything,
Yeah.
So yeah, when I had the right environment, creating was easier, I guess, but not
Yeah.
easy, but easier.
Uh, in terms of your environment, how has that shaped your creativity? Do you find you were more creative in New York versus Nigeria, or like how did that? What's the difference?
Wow. Definitely more creative in Nigeria because like the other downside to having everything in like New York, in London, is like the hunger is different because you're so comfortable. Like, oh, once I hit www.google, it's just gonna load up. Boom. But here, you're now somewhere. You're like www.google might load up, or it might not load up. So it's like you're always on your toes. Like the focus just goes from like instead of like 100 to like 1,000. Like so, you definitely have to like tighten your shoelace, bootstrap, and it just requires a lot more focus from you working from somewhere here, like this place. Very you have to be very intentional. You know, honestly, it's almost like a uphill fight because like you're struggling with many things many people just take for granted. So but like there's an advantage. It makes you more serious in a way.
No, Ola and I actually talked about that once before. I can't remember if we were recording or not, but it's funny. We're like back in the day when you don't have all of the tools that you need to pursue your creative endeavor. Suddenly,
Yeah.
you're solving problems in the most creative way,
Yeah,
and then
that
when
scarcity it gives the
you
more creative
yeah,
mindset.
you start to think
Yeah.
outside of the box a lot more to make something happen, right?
Yeah, we talked about that in the episode on side hustles. So that should be
Mm,
episode 7. Yeah, if
mm,
anyone wants to go back and listen to that,
Shout
that's
out.
how immigrants are able to have the energy when they're in the new environments to create, to go after their goals. I was saying that from a perspective of someone who left their home country to a new country. You're doing all these jobs, but at the same time, on the flip side, that's what you're telling us, which is when you decide to be at home as well, it keeps you on your toes. You
it
don't
does.
take things for granted. You create your own
Yeah.
systems. That's one of the conversations me and Fez have had actually in person, where we talked about Nigeria has no systems, but it gives you that muscle to create your
Yeah.
own systems, and that actually makes you more creative in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. It
So
does.
I have a question which might seem like we're jumping back a little bit, but I'm really curious as to how you got into video editing in the first place. Like, did you stumble upon it? You said you were kind of just like filming a little bit here and there, and then putting edits together in New York. But like, what guided you to learn those things? Were you learning mostly on YouTube, like self-taught, or did you go like through courses? The reason I ask this is for any creatives that are listening right now. What would be the tips to get them started on a journey similar to yours?
Okay. Okay, good. A lot of it was built on the background of already being a little bit tech savvy, you know. You would go out, have all this footage, editing was the next thing that came naturally. I started with some software. Back then, I was still with the Windows ecosystem. I think it was called Lightworks. It was a very basic, simple editing software. So that was like my foundation, it was like then and now. So I told you when I left the company, I got a camera and I got a laptop. So the laptop I got was a MacBook. So with the MacBook now, I already knew I was going to move fully into Premiere Pro, which is an editing, non-linear editing software (NLE). Uh, so with then it was all self-taught, watching the loads of tutorials. But not, it just kept coming naturally. There will be a challenge. It will be new to you. You want to be like, oh, how do you do this? You look it up. Just doing that over the years, man. It's crazy. Like honestly, that whole thing, it really boosted my self confidence. And till today, I feel like there's nothing I can't learn on my own. Like, because you really don't need school for any. Like, that's one of the things I was trying to like keep to the end. Like my takeaway is like school. I feel like school is so overrated. There's a type of learning that is like very natural and organic that comes from like just like tr- a need and trying to solve that need. Like we humans are just amazing. So yeah, I picked it up really quick. It was all I was learning as I was going, and till today I'm still learning. Till tomorrow I'll be learning. And, it doesn't end. Yeah.
Have Have you ever faced any moments where you felt a little bit discouraged? And like,
Mm,
if so, like, what did you do to overcome that and get back to what is coming across as a very natural hunger that you have? How do you
yeah.
maintain that, basically?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, discouragement. They say comparison is a thief of joy. So like the only times I would have probably felt discouraged on this journey was probably if I caught myself maybe comparing myself to someone else who'd had different circumstances or different education. Because obviously, these people that have gone to film school and all that, like, but then I just remind myself, like, we're on different lanes, like, you understand, like, yeah, it's different lanes. I don't compare. Whenever I feel what was the word you used,
Discouraged?
discouraged. Yeah. Yeah, no, nothing really discourages me because I know why I'm doing this and I'm really focused. uh I have a mission as well that guides me. So like anything outside of that is there's no discouragement. My biggest thing is just to okay, there was another turning point, which is when I came back to Nigeria, there's another editor. His name is Bidemi Popson. He's a local editor here, like based in Nigeria. He's not local, like he schooled in England as well. But I didn't, I was doing this thing, and then one day I was in Nigeria. I was working on a video for maybe was it Jameson or something, and then I just stumbled on this video. It was like for First Bank. They had this party, and it was by this editor. His name was Bidemi. I was just like that video, watching that video, and just seeing how crazy and how much time. Because as an editor, when you see a video, you can know how much effort and time went into it. So yeah, that it was like a spark. Like that was the day. Like I was, when Michael Jordan it was like, and then it became personal. So yeah, like yeah. So since that day, like that spark, so it's always just been my mission. That thing I felt that made me like take it to the next level. Like go even harder. So I always just want someone else that's watching my video to feel that same thing. So I can't be discouraged because as long as I'm giving it 1000% every time, and I'm already like my biggest mission is just to inspire someone that sees something I've made into potentially taking that step to starting as well. And I'm a living testimony already. I get so many DMs, like so much love, like so many young people just like, oh wow, like you inspired me to do this, and I keep up with them. I follow their growth, like I'm so impressed, like so it just makes me fulfilled. So there's no discouragement in my life. I feel I'm living a full life. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love to hear that, man. I don't know if you noticed, but Ola and I started smiling when you talked about you using your mission to anchor you. We were just
Yeah.
talking about that in an unreleased episode, so that's coming up.
Unreleased.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah, that was literally the last one we recorded. So, like,
Yeah,
yeah, this resonates a lot with us too. Like having that guiding mission when you're struggling, just remember the reason why you were doing what it is you're doing in the
for
first
sure.
place,
For
and
sure.
that helps you
For
to
sure.
get back on track. Try new things, get up when you fall down.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. Ola,
And
do you
as
have?
long as you're moving in that direction,
Yeah,
you can always do away with the feeling of discouragement or
facts, man.
depression. Naturally it will try and come, but
Yeah,
as long as you're focused and you know your end goal and you know why you're doing this.
Yeah, I definitely am a witness to Fez's power to influence and inspire. Even as you mentioned that you already inspired an idea of the direction that we'll go with this podcast slash project. So I would discuss that later. And even my friends that are in Canada, I send your videos to them, and they are inspired as well to go back to their roots and just connect to their roots. And their roots is not just home; their root is the interest that they've had in their early childhood. So for you, I know a lot of your creative work, even though you're in Nigeria, it doesn't really use Nigerian elements. It uses elements of things that I know we grew up with, like, oh, this was a cartoon you used to watch. This was, I see a lot of that
Very
in
personal.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so besides, using your own roots as creativity, using networking, what are some other like success strategies that you've found that has been helpful for you so far?
Hmm. Working on my people skills, being friends with my clients, like, you know, at the end of the day, if you treat it as a gig or a job, it's never the same as when you take it as, oh, this is my friend and we're trying to creatively solve a problem that this my friend has using video. So when my mindset shifted from just seeing them as, oh, a paying client, to like making it a little bit more personal, understanding their pain points, like, okay, what is wrong, what do you want this video to solve, like, then it's like the connection becomes tighter. And that has been like a little thing that has given me another edge, from a people perspective. Yeah, so
So your creativity, you see it as a tool for problem solving.
yeah, creative problem solving. Yeah.
I love that framing.
That's a really
Yeah.
good, that's a really strong tip for like anybody listening who's working with clients hands on, to
Yeah.
be able to have like personable relationship with someone, not put up that barrier.
Yeah.
That's something that I've been learning myself recently as well. It's like a lot of the time I used to just consider, okay, you're your entity, I'm my entity. We just got to do this contractual agreement and then we're done. But
Yeah.
it's
Right.
just always so much smoother when you're actually working with your friend. Like I'm actively working with my friend on this podcast now. Like the challenges are just, we're on the same side of the table trying to solve the problem. Whereas like sometimes with clients, it can feel like they're on that side of the table, you're on this side of the table. So being able to
Exactly.
like put yourself, with them and
Yeah.
help each other solve the issue, it's just a way stress-free way to be instead of like the other
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if it's for like a company, you can always identify one stakeholder. I always call them the major stakeholder.
Yeah.
Like, and that person can be like your point person, where you guys are sharing each like pain points with each other.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk to the whole department. Just find the most important person who has a say, not someone that doesn't have a say on the final
Yeah. Yeah.
deliverable. Yeah. So if you can just have that kind of communication with that kind of person, it makes the whole process more enjoyable.
Along these same lines, if you could go back, like 10, 15 years, talk to yourself
Hmm.
again, what are the top things you would tell yourself to maybe get on this track faster, or yeah, just like get onto this trajectory earlier on than maybe perhaps you did?
Okay, 10, 15 years, right? I would tell younger me that school is a scam.
I remember you mentioning that
But
before.
yeah, and but like honestly, it's a little bit overrated. I'll lean a bit more into my hobbies. I'll tell him lean a little bit more into your hobbies, and I'll tell him leave women alone. Like that's like the least important thing for you right now. Like we always think it's so important, but like honestly, there's a lot of building for you to do at that age.
Yeah,
And learning. So
yeah,
all that other stuff will come later. He
yeah,
would reshuffle his priorities, basically,
yeah.
younger me.
Hope all your listeners caught that. Leave the women alone.
Yeah.
Um, if you were to start from scratch now, you didn't have your MacBook, you
Yeah.
didn't have your camera. Where would you start?
Yeah. With my phone.
I love that
I'll start
answer.
with my phone. I can
Yeah,
make anything with, anything,
yeah.
honestly. it's the idea. Honestly, most times we get lost with the tools,
Yeah.
but it's the idea at the end of the day.
All you need is a phone to get started.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're in good times. These are good times. Like the things you could do on your phone. In fact, I even have a friend right now because like the way the country is, like people are. We need to talk about how like the tenacity of like the average Nigerian creative. Like I've seen these people do things with their phones like that people can't even do it. You give them the laptop, keyboard, mouse, extra monitor, but then they doing all these things with their phone just because why? This is all they could afford. And the creativity coming out from that alone is crazy. It just lets me know nothing is impossible, man. Don't get lost with the tools. Yeah.
Do you think the medium that they're using, in this case their phone, actually is an advantage for them? Because maybe it unlocks a form of creativity that you won't have
Yeah.
with a fancy camera.
So it's an advantage because it forces you to think of more ways where you can set yourself apart using that phone. So like by the time you now have the laptop, have the keyboard, have the mouse, have the monitor, have the whole setup, it's like at that point now it's just more stuff that you can do stuff with. But like yeah, it definitely forces a type of it forces you to be creative. It forces you to be creative with those limitations. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the time that we spent today. I really loved like hearing your story. I'm super
Yeah.
interested in like where everything goes, which leads me
Yeah.
into the next question, which is what are the projects you're most looking forward to? Like what is, what's on the horizon for you and what should we look out for?
Okay, so yeah, in line with my mission of inspiring, I started a blog on my website. So with this blog now, I am interviewing young Nigerian editors who are just like starting up, and that has been so fulfilling, so rewarding. Not only from like a networking point, but like just from telling these people stories, because in filmmaking a lot of times the credit goes to the director. You always see, oh, directed by this guy, directed by this, directed by, but many times people don't even like the person that put everything you watch together is called an editor. So I'm trying to, I'm working on putting the editor in the spotlight. That's one thing I'm currently doing and I'm in love with, telling the stories of these young guys. Aside that, working on some commercials with some brands. I got a family in Dubai, PowerHorse. There's something coming out.
Yeah, very cool, man.
Just wrapped up a video for a Nigerian artist. Probably know her as Teni the Entertainer. So that's coming out soon too.
Are you
Uh,
able to say the name of the song?
Uh, yeah, it's called No Days Off. No Days Off.
It's
Yeah.
trending on
So
TikTok right now. That's why I
is
wanted
it on
to
TikTok? I
know
don't
it.
have a TikTok account, guys.
I don't have one
Yeah.
either, but you can use TikTok without the account.
Oh, for
Yo,
real?
we do have a
You
Foreign James account though, so you can follow if you're on TikTok.
Yeah. So yeah, interesting stuff like that. Music videos, commercials, telling stories, and also now I have a the company page, obviously with down. So we're now trying to do some more educative stuff, like here's 5 tips for freelancers, here's just bullet point stuff that you can read, carousel format, educative content, trying to put more of that out there, how to grow your network, stuff like that, and some other stuff that's in the works that we haven't put out yet. But yeah.
Earlier on, I mentioned that you inspired ideas for this podcast. One of them is the Out Network carousel that you have on your page.
Oh, really?
So,
That's interesting.
my take on that is we'll start breaking these episodes into different carousels and
Yeah.
have like snippets of videos that so that it's actionable for people.
Yeah, honestly, explore all the YouTube shorts, all that. Just explore everything.
See whichever
I would
works.
have been doing a lot more talking head stuff, but naturally, even if you go on my page, there's almost nothing of me. I don't know, but
Naturally,
like, yeah, that's my next mountain to climb. Talking and showing myself a bit more. But I've always just believed in just putting the work out there and
Yeah.
let the work do the talking. Because at the end of
Mhm.
the day, like, I'm inspired by artists like Daft Punk. MF Doom is my favorite artist.
Yeah.
All these guys hid behind masks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just like, why am I showing my face? I can inspire without showing my face, and I can also have that double life. It's like the only kids that recognize you are the kids that are tapped in, and you can just walk outside, calm.
Yeah.
But yeah,
do we need
yeah.
to put like some mask on your face for this episode?
Nah, nah, exclusive for foreign gems.
These are for the top 10 kids too, who
Right.
really want to
So
get to know Fairs.
honestly, this is like one of okay. Aside, so in 2021, there's this platform art festival. It's called ArtX. So they reached out to me. So what ArtX is, it's like it's an international art fair, and it takes place here in Lagos. It takes place here in Lagos. So they showcase like the craziest talents that year in art, all forms of art. So these people reached out to me, and that was a very transformative experience, and that was like one of the first platforms where I found myself on stage doing talks. I don't even know how they found me, but yeah, it was a crazy experience. I worked alongside Finest. I worked alongside artists like Alo. It was a good experience. And I created some projects for them that they used for the festival as well. So yeah.
Some of the names you mentioned are like the biggest trending artists in Nigeria as of today.
Tapped in, as you
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very.
We You mentioned being inspired by artists like MF Daft Punk, and so it seems like you understand your brand very well and what you want it to be like. How did you like? Are you intentional about that with every decision you make, or is it organic? Like in terms of protecting and building your brand, how do you approach it?
So with the brand, it's very intentional. I know how I want it to look, feel, and that's part of the benefits of like because I'm basically running everything myself. So I have a lot of time to think about how I want things to look, how I want things to be, and I have a lot of time to implement as well, and I also have the ability to implement myself. But been working with some young talents. Like if you notice the educative content, there's some illustrations, some sketches, very hand drawn,
Yep.
very not too digital.
Hmm.
Just yeah. So I like that handmade feel. I would always want that to carry on into the brand. So yeah, there's a lot of intention behind everything going on. There's a lot of intention. There's a lot of thought, and it's very. Would you say it's organic if you put a lot of thought behind it? It's
That's a good
intentional. So
Yeah.
philosophical
it's,
question.
it's
Yeah.
intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the page, by the way. Yeah, I was checking it out. Man, it's so unique. It immediately stands out and everything, like really popping colors. And now I want to
Yeah.
check out more of like your video work, see
Yeah.
how like that
Thank you.
translates a little bit more into that as well. Yeah, just wanted to give you that shout out when you mentioned that page.
The
Thank you. Thank
project
you.
is
Thank
called
you.
Project Fairs, by the way, for
Yeah.
anyone that wants to check it out. And your IG was that one called the one with your
My
actual project?
IG, my IG is ITSFEZ. So it's Fez. Yeah, ITSFEZ. And then Project Fez is like the more structured part of it with, it's like, yeah.
Also, what was the address for the blog? In case some of the listeners.
You can find the blog on www.project-fairs.com.
Okay, gotcha.
Project-fairs.com. Yeah.
We'll put all these links in the description anyway, so nobody has to
Hey,
memorize any of this. But yeah, man,
yeah. Thank you,
gonna
Foreign
check out your work.
Gems.
I have one last question. So,
Yeah.
like, what's your future outlook on the creative landscape in Nigeria? Like, what do you see if you were to
Hmm.
wake up one day, 5, 10 years from now, and look out the window? What do you see?
Great question, man.
Hmm. Honestly, it's more of like a glass half full situation for me now because already these young Nigerian acts are like so hungry and so talented. And now with like all the advancement, like I'm sure you guys have already caught on to like the whole AI wave and how much more accessible everything is now. And it's like getting your idea out into the world is almost like a text prompt away. So honestly, I would say the future is bright. Um, but there's also something I notice here in Nigeria that everybody's always trying to like play it safe. Like once they see there's a formula of like doing something, they want to just like latch onto to that formula and like use it as much and milk it and get as much money, from just doing that thing systematically formulate. But real creativity, I feel like just leave the whole formula thing. Don't be afraid. I mean, I might sound privileged saying don't be afraid to try out new ideas. Some people don't have the liberty to try out ideas. They just need the next paycheck
Hmm.
desperately. But like, there's that thing I've been noticing where some of the youth, not all of them, they just wait for to see a formula that works and then they can copy that. But like, my advice would be to actually study. If you're interested in something, study it. It's a language. Everything is a language. Programming is a language. Marketing is a language. So learn the language until a point where you can say what you feel like saying, and don't don't copy how someone else is saying whatever it is they're saying. There's so many ways you could say it, but just so my advice would just be learn the language yourself. But yeah, future looking bright. So many tools, so many learning is almost easier than it's ever been. Just try and as long as you can overcome that barrier of internet, electricity. Invest in data, invest in learning, invest because the future is bright for you and the tools are making it easier than ever.
Love it.
These are great gems that you're dropping. And even I can take away from it. I'm sure Mark can as well. So,
Yeah,
and the way I see it is whenever we're at that point where we can take away things, those are usually
yeah,
things that our audience tend to resonate with as well. So
yeah.
I really appreciate this, Fed. This would
Thanks,
have been a
thanks.
great place to end this, but I know Mark had a question
Yeah,
in
sure.
regards to access to talent.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, right around the time we had like a bit of a break earlier, I wanted to ask you a question about being in Nigeria,
Yeah,
and it relates to networking as well. I
yeah,
wonder how like being in Nigeria has enabled you to reach these, monumental collaborations a lot quicker than perhaps
yeah,
trying to do the same thing in the
yeah,
UK or in the US. Like it feels like
yeah,
you're able to use your network a lot more effectively to get to work with the clients that you want to work. I want to hear a little bit
yeah.
more about that.
Okay, good question. That's actually a very good question. There was one day, right? I told you, a lot of my learning was from tutorials and all that. And something happened. There's this guy. His name is Olufemi. He does tutorials on editing on YouTube. It's quite big,
Yeah,
and I don't even know how it happened. I found myself chatting with him, and I sent him some of my work. And this is someone I'd always watch his tutorials.
yeah,
He was so impressed. He was like, "Wow, like your stuff is so crazy." I
yeah,
had a lot of good things to say. But basically, all that happened because I was bold enough to like break the ice and just send him a random DM saying, "Hey, how you doing?"
Yeah.
So
Shoot your
creatives, that is another important thing.
yeah.
Don't be afraid. Don't look at your environment. You can talk to anybody. We live in such a good time right now.
Yeah.
The fact that you're physically in Lagos, Nigeria, is not stopping you from working with anybody. I've worked with people that in Russia, Germany,
Yeah.
Vietnam. I have friends everywhere. Like we brainstorm, and this all goes back to like my gaming background. Like
Mm.
because when you're gaming, you're talking to people. It's all on your headset. The internet gives you access to the world,
Yeah.
so you can develop real friendships. Don't be afraid to hit your mentors. Don't be afraid to slide in their DMs.
Mm.
The world is beyond wherever you find yourself right now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Just
don't
shoot
be.
your shot. Shoot your
Yeah,
shot.
just shoot your shot. Basically,
Yeah.
that's the tip.
We love that
Don't be
saying here.
afraid. Yeah, and
Oh,
you'll be surprised. You might feel like they won't respond or they won't have your time, but these people go through their DMs. Yeah,
yeah.
there's nothing impossible. But also maybe have something to show. You know
Yeah.
how.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll pay attention to you.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, it's not impossible. It's not impossible.
I love it. Fez, thank
Yeah,
you so much for your time. Thank you for giving us all of these amazing gems. Actually, there's so many actionable things from this podcast. I think
yeah,
this might be one of the first ones that we do like carousels with, maybe like a bullet point type list for like an Instagram post or something. I don't know, but
yeah,
there's just like a lot of very actionable things.
yeah.
So like I had a great time, getting to know you better. I'm sure we'll have you back on the pod again soon. But I just wanted to thank you for this time right here, right now. Thank you, man.
It's been a pleasure, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, this is Foreign Gems, another episode. We're not calling the number. This one is on against all odds. Thriving from a country like Nigeria, and I've learned so much. And as I mentioned, I know Mark seems to have learned so much, and I know a lot of you will. If you have any comments, feedback, or additional questions for Fairs, please let us know. If there's something you didn't like about this episode, let us know as well. We welcome all feedback. And it's just a team of two right now. We're doing just like Fairs, we're doing everything ourselves, recording, editing, research for guests, and everything. So, however you can help us, let us know. Share with friends, share with anyone that you would find value out of it, and give us suggestions as well. And yeah, let's keep building this for all of us.
Cool. What's up, man? Thanks, guys, for having me.
Of course, man. Can't wait to have you back again. Next time we'll talk about gaming.
Yo, I would love that. I would love that.
Right, foreign gems, and see you next time. Foreign perspectives to familiar topics.